So we finished talking about the successes the League of Nations had with settling disputes. Now we're going to move on to the challenges they had settling disputes, or in other words, where they weren't successful, really. So first we're going to start with Vilna in 1920. This is a dispute between Poland and Lithuania. We're having Lithuania pop up a few times now, aren't we? Well, here, Vilna is specifically the capital of Lithuania. But what's significant about Vilna is its population is mostly Polish. So what do you think Poland's going to do? They're going to what? They're going to want it. So how are they going to go about getting it? Go for it. False. That would have been a nice thing to do, but no.
Send troops?
They sent troops. So Lithuania contacts the League of Nations and is like, hey, we have an issue here. We have a border issue. Poland has sent troops into our territory. They're trying to take our capital city. So the League of Nations comes in. They investigate. And the League of Nations orders Poland to leave. Makes sense, right? At first, Poland's like, okay, sure, no problem, we can do that. And then they turn around and reinforce their troops. So they send more troops. It's a terrible era. So they send more troops to the area. And Poland annexes the city. Which means they take control over it. They say, all right, this is ours now. Officially, this is Poland. So the League of Nations looks at this and does a whole lot of nothing. And here's why the League does a whole lot of nothing. Poland is mostly made up of what country? Germany. Germany. It was mostly taken from, and part of Russia too, but that was land that Germany had gained through the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. So who are the two big power players in the League of Nations? Germany's not in it. It's Britain and France. Who do Britain and France not like? Germany. And this is right after the war. So who's a natural ally? Poland is a natural ally of Britain and France against Germany. Why do they want to upset Poland? They don't. So here, this is a failure because Britain and France put their own national interests above the League of Nations. Britain and France are more concerned about making Poland an ally and don't want to upset Poland, so they allow the League of Nations order to be ignored for their own personal interests. And what can the League do about it? Nothing. So this is a pretty big challenge the League faces here, right? Next up, we have the Treaty of Riga. It's amazing. A treaty's a problem here. Riga, by the way, is in present-day Latvia, but Latvia has nothing to do with this. But so we're in that part of the world. Again, by Lithuania and Poland and Russia. So who do you think this one's going to include? Good guess. But actually, no, Lithuania is not part of this one.
Poland.
Poland is involved. Greece is nowhere near up there. Nowhere near.
You never know.
But you can know, and Greece is nowhere near up there.
Yeah, it's more.
Geographically, it's nowhere near. It's south.
Yeah.
It's very far south.
Yeah, near the middle.
Russia. This involves Poland and Russia. This is going to sound backwards, but Poland actually invades Russia.
Huh?
Spicy Poland.
They're getting a little antsy here, aren't they? They're getting a little big for their britches. They invade Russia. And because of the situation occurring in Russia in 1921, they pretty much have no other option but to sign the Treaty of Riga.
Wait, why are we going back in time to early 1920s?
Because now we're talking about the challenges.
Oh, okay.
So we did all the successes, now we're going back and talking about the problems they had. So same time period, but... And so Russia is forced to sign the Treaty of Riga because they don't really have that much option. So Poland ends up gaining. Poland gets 31,000 square miles of land.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pretty sizable chunk of land, isn't it? You know what the League of Nations says about this and says about it?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Is Poland being aggressive here?
Yeah.
Is this some type of situation the League should be getting involved in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the League of Nations takes no action for two reasons. So other reasons. So why do you think the League would take no action? Go for it.
Because they didn't want to get involved with Russia since they were having their own revolution. They wanted to
Well, this is ended by now, so who's in charge? I thought you said communist before. Should I say let me check? Yes, communist. Actually, that would be something typically that the League might intervene in. You would think, well, anyways, like, hey, don't invade a country that's having a civil war. Don't take advantage of them. But so the whole thing is they don't want to help communists. Who specifically doesn't want to help communists? Britain and France don't want to help them. You're communists. We're not going to help you. And they already want to be friends with Poland. But there's one other reason.
I don't want to spend money on another war.
No. Think about who's involved. Yeah, what about Russia? Might be another reason why the League doesn't get involved. That hasn't happened yet. Who's not a member of the League? Russia's not a member of the League. So this is typically something that the League of Nations would try to intervene in. They can justify it because they really don't want to intervene because Russia's communist. And they don't want to spend the effort on helping out Russia. So also, they're able to kind of justify that by going, well, Russia's not even in the League of Nations. So we're under no requirement. They don't have to listen to us to begin with. And we're under no requirement to help them. So here, Poland is allowed to be aggressive because they don't want to get involved with the communist nation. They're like, you're not even in the League anyways. We don't care about you. Either their whole point is to prevent future wars. So that's what happens with the Treaty of Riga. Huh? No, it's Latvia. It's a different country. Then we get the Ruhr, which I'm not going to go into much on this one because you know what happened with the Ruhr, with France and Belgium. Now here's the thing with this one. Can the League of Nations do anything about what happened in the Ruhr?
Yes. No. Maybe.
Think back to when we learned about the makeup of the league and how the league was organized. What do you have to agree to an action? It has to be unanimous. Exactly. That's exactly it.
It's like regular law, but with British country.
So the League of Nations can't do anything. Specifically because the main part of the League of Nations that has to do with dealing with disputes is the Council. I can't really hear you.
To be honest, I would have thought it's like a punishment to finish the sales.
Yeah, but that would also have to be unanimous. And actually, in the covenants, France is a permanent member. You can kick Belgium out. They're a non-permanent member. France is a permanent member. So that's the problem here. France is a member of the council who would be the part that would be putting punishments on them for violating parts of the League of Nations. France and Belgium are not going to vote to punish themselves. So they can't do anything about the Ruhr thing at all. They're completely useless in this one. That's why it takes until the Dawes Plan to officially get them out of there. That's frustrating, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Especially if you're Germany. League's not helping you out. Now let's move to our last one for today. And this is the Corfu incident. Anybody remember the Corfu incident? Go ahead and share if you remember it. What?
Isn't this one Italy invaded France?
No, France isn't involved in this one.
No,
Oh, no.
Italy invaded
It's Greece and Italy.
Sorry.
Greece and Italy. Greece and Italy. Remember, this is whenever the League of Nations sent people to investigate the issue between Greece and Albania, and the Italian investigators were killed. So Mussolini invades Corfu and demands payment. So this is a failure because the League of Nations actually ordered Italy to leave. What do you think Mussolini says?
No.
No.
And what else does he say?
Money.
Not yet.
War.
What does he say to the League?
Vengeance.
Who started that?
And they threatened to leave the League of Nations. Mussolini's like, no, we're not going to leave, and we're going to leave the League of Nations if you try to push this. Do they want Italy to leave the League?
No.
No. Also, what would be another issue with this? Specifically about Italy. Or trying to do anything.
A good war.
They're in the council. Is Italy going to allow anything to happen to them? No. Plus, there's something else that exists at this time that we haven't learned about because it's not that significant except for this. There's something known as the Council of Ambassadors. This was existed for the purpose right after the end of World War I to actually go about and enforce and set up the rulings of the Paris Peace Conference, Paris Peace Settlements. So in other words, all those border disputes that were initially going to be had before the League of Nations can get set up, the Council of Ambassadors was the one who was organizing that. So Mussolini says the Council of Ambassadors needs to come in and look at this. Even though the League of Nations already exists and we're well past this, we're like, this is a Paris Peace Settlement issue. Bring in the Council of Ambassadors. The Council of Ambassadors actually rules that Greece needs to pay Italy.
Wait, any decision that the ambassadors make at the end?
They're not part of the actual League of Nations. They're a separate entity.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually what gets followed, is what the Council of Ambassadors orders. So here, what's another challenge the League has here then? Keep in mind, the Council of Ambassadors is not associated with the League. The League orders that Italy leaves. The Council of Ambassadors orders that Greece pays. Greece pays. The League of Nations order was ignored, and it was overruled by another body. If the League of Nations can be overruled, they're not that powerful. So the League of Nations gets overruled. So right here, you have, and this is all in the first 3 years of its existence. It had some successes, and mostly it had successes with organizing and figuring out border disputes. However, you can clearly see here, pushing back against it can be successful if you have support at least. Or if, rather, maybe you don't have the will of the members of the League of Nations to actually enforce what they want to do. Like, let's say Britain and France here is obviously a big issue. When they're willing to ignore League rulings or accept League rulings to be ignored when it benefits them. So how much power does the League actually have here? None. Any questions?